for the reduction of dust and mold in your house, insofar as it comes from your ductwork, make sure you contact Ducts, the indoor air professionals, formerly known as duct busters. Ducts will clean the mold and mildew and the junk from your long neglected ductwork, everything between your HVAC system and your vent. And no, the aftermarket Lego AK-47s will not be saved for you to give back to your son. They're gone. They're gone, and you will have a cleared house. Well, Karen, talk a bit more about some of the thinking of the effect of this planning if it's approved by the City Council, what its effect will be on life in Chattanooga. How could this help life change? Could it help the social life, the social mix of Chattanooga change at all, or does that grow on its own apart from impositions by the state upon architecture?
Well, again, the form-based code, as with any zoning, and that's what this is zoning, it's really geared to physical development. So certainly, social activity and things will come along with that. But what we're really looking at is physical development in the downtown, how the buildings get built. And so once this gets adopted by the City Council, any new development will have to conform to these new standards. Now, if you have an existing building and you're not doing anything to it that changes the exterior of the building, you don't have to do anything. This only applies to new development, new construction, additions to a building, those sorts of things that are going to change the exterior.
Now, this I'm holding up for our viewer a sequence of four images. This is Main Street. Is that right?
That's correct.
Tell how this change takes place. What is the process of it taking place over time, Karen Hunt?
Sure. So say you own a piece of property and you decide you want to put a new building on your property. Maybe you want to do a 4-story mixed-use building with some retail on the ground floor and apartments up above, for instance. So you would call the city's land development office, set up a consultation with them. They'll sit down with you, show you the requirements of this code, make sure you understand it, make sure you know what kinds of drawings you need to submit, which is very similar to what we do now. And then you submit your drawings, and the city's land development office will review it based on the standards in this new code. They will either just approve it, and then you're on your way to going to get your building permit. If you're not meeting any or some of the standards, then they will deny it and tell you in writing what specific standards you're not meeting. So you'll know what you need to do to get it into compliance. So it's very similar to the way the process works today with zoning and building permits and that sort of thing. Well,
from frame one, the top left frame, to the bottom right frame, where your cut line says a parklet, a sidewalk extension that provides more space and amenities, and bicycle corral replace several on-street parking spaces. So what you have less room for street parking, more amenities for cyclists. There are shrubs, there are benches. Talk about what is the view? Why is that important? Why is that intended to be part of the plan?
Well, again, we want to make this a very downtown, a very attractive, safe, walkable place. That also includes things like shade when it's 99 degrees outside. But we're working very closely with the city's transportation department to make sure we're not crowding out too much and causing traffic problems. So we're working closely with them to see how much parking are we going to need in the area? Can we include some bike lanes and sidewalks and things? For the most part, sidewalks are already there in the downtown.
Is there a bias against the locomotive, the self-locomotion of the Chattanooga and Hamilton County resident? Is there a bias, Karen Hunt, in your and your colleagues thinking against cars? Is there a hostility against self-propulsion?
No, actually. I mean, cars are with us. They're going to be around for a while. I love my car. They're a great invention. But in the downtown, again, we also want it to be a very walkable area. And the downtowns are really geared for that. And so we're trying to just make sure we balance accommodating cars and pedestrians and bicycles in transit. So you have a number of options to choose from.
Have you had anything to do, Karen, with the thinking that goes behind, or the rules that brought about the city's bicycle lane changes downtown and elsewhere?
Not directly, no. The city's transportation department has really been leading that effort.
We have your work. We're making notice of your work, Karen Hunt, that is hoping to replace a system of zoning that is not working anymore, where you have there are complaints in your mind and in the part of Mr. Bridger, the director, and others about the shape of downtown, where the focus on zoning has been on the use and not the appearance. Is there a 100-year problem ahead with your plan now? Let's say your plan gets passed, it enters into the code book of Tennessee government, of Chattanooga government, and time passes, decades passed, and we're all gone. Our grandchildren are gray, and our great-great-grandchildren are on the scene, perhaps. And we have zone-based coding. What is the prospect of there being a crunch 100 years from now, where this system has created its own problems? What are the problems that we're not imagine what the problems are that we're not foreseeing with your proposed scheme?
Well, I think with any zoning ordinance, including the one we have now, you occasionally have to go in and amend it. Sometimes it just gets so old you need to overhaul it, which is basically what we're trying to do in the downtown area with this new code. But one of the things we've said is that after the code is adopted, within a year, we're going to go back and take a look at what's been happening. We're going to see, are there any issues, maybe some little glitches, some unique situations we didn't think of that we can change, and do that on basically an annual basis. Because anytime you're dealing with something this large and this complex, you can't think of every possible situation. So we want to make sure we monitor it over the years and give ourselves an opportunity to come back and fix things that might not be working.
So you're suggesting that planners can freshen their worn rules, and that's something that actually happens.
Yeah,
they actually do that.
Hopefully so, yeah.
Okay. Well, Karen Hunt, tell my listener where he can find out more about this. You've got some forums ahead. You had one just the other day. Tell us about what happened last week and what's ahead.
Well, we have a series of open house events. The first one was last week. We have another one tomorrow, and the third one is on March 3rd. It's going to be held at the Development Resource Center, 1250 Market Street. Anyone is welcome to drop in at any time during the day. You don't have to have an appointment. It's just an open house. Come by and we'll be there. Staff will be there to answer your questions. Also at noon tomorrow, and again at noon on March 3rd, we're going to have a brief presentation that will focus on a specific aspect of the code to give people more information.
Okay, I think my listener would care about that. Okay, so that's tomorrow at noon at 12:15. 12:50. Thank you. Market Street. Yes. It's an open house all day, but a presentation at noon, just before lunch. You can bring your lunch and listen to the presentation, and there'll be some other ones as well. Well, all right. So, what question have I not asked you, Karen Hunt, that we need to answer in this chat?
Well, one of the things that I think I want to remind people of is that A, this is just zoning. B, it's just a draft. So that's what we're doing right now, is getting input from people. We really want to hear your feedback. We've already made some changes to the first draft based on the kind of input and feedback people were giving us. And so we're here to listen, and we want to hear what people have to think about.
What kind of changes were they?
Several instances, we changed the maximum building height. Some people thought maybe what we were proposing was a little too tall, and we went down. Other areas, we've done some things to provide more protection for some of those existing single-family neighborhoods. Some of the folks that live there were very concerned about new development happening around them.
Well, Karen Hunt, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Karen Hunt is overseeing the form-based code proposal that's in draft form. It was published last week, and you can find out more about that by going to Nooganomics.com. I have an interview that I did with Karen not long ago, and also you can find out more by going to Nooga.com, which has a story last week about it. I do thank you for giving us a couple minutes of your time. Thank you.
Starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I'm going to Carter Shooting Supply.
Carter Shooting Supply.
That's right, Carter Shooting Supply. They're having a great sale on all of their guns right now, and it's name brands like Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Springfield, their AR-15s. They've got the hottest gun in the land right now, the Sky 9mm. Man, it comes in all the cool colors. If you're an Alabama fan, they've got crimson. If you're a big orange fan, they've got an orange one. You know, all the women are loving the pink one in Tiffany blue. Plus, it has a lifetime warranty replacement. If the gun is stolen, all you need is your police report or receipt, and they'll replace it free. It has a 60-day full money-back guarantee. That's Carter Shooting Supply. They're in Harrison right there at 6210 Highway 58.
Are they online?
Yes, they are. It's cartershootingsupply.com, or give them a call, 423-344-1099. Now, this sale's not going to last too long, so you need to hurry up and get there. And they do have a great indoor shooting facility. You can get your Tennessee handgun carry permit also. That's Carter Shooting Supply, 423-344-1099.
Hi, I'm Sabrina with Sabrina Realty Associates. Now is a great time to sell your home. In our area, inventory is at an all-time low, which translates into higher sales prices. Call us today at 423-499-7780 to set up a free consultation and discuss our unique and aggressive marketing programs. We will provide you with a free market analysis to determine the right value of your home. Call us today at 423-499-7780 or visit our website at SabrinaRealty.com.
You need a place for your party or maybe a wedding reception for 100 or even more. Maybe you'd like to host a small trade show for your business, and you need a very affordable venue. Are you looking for a place for your birthday gala or services to start up a church? Look no further than the Hidden Gem in Hickson. It's an overlooked, newly appointed reception hall right here in Hickson, Tennessee. Big space, small price. That's right, big space, small price. Call Mr. Chu and ask for a tour. 316-7388. That's 423-316-7388. He'll tell you a lot more about the venue. Rent this venue today. Just call 423-316-7388 and ask for Mr. Chu.
More businesses are facing problems and penalties for not complying with IRS rules. Business owners must file Form 1099 on or before February 28. Need assistance? E.J. Pelton CPA will help. If you need 1099 help, call E.J. Pelton Company at 332-3339. He will file those 1099s for you and keep the government off your back. E.J. Pelton Company on Brainerd Road near the Belvoir Light and in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike north of Food City. Call 332-3339.
I wonder who's watching me now. The IRS.
Nooganomics.com is a slap of fresh air, a 2x4 across the brain every morning. Read Nooganomics.com to find out what's happening in Chattanooga. Local-centric, Nooga-centric. Read it. The man who matters does. You should too. Nooganomics.com.
Fox News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Saudi Daisy, Chattanooga.
CBS News, I'm Frank Sedapani. Investigators in Kalamazoo, Michigan may be learning something about the motive for the weekend shooting rampage that left 6 people dead. State Police Lieutenant Dale Hinn says the suspected gunman's been talking.
I can't get into the specifics of what those interviews have yielded, but he has been cooperative.
12-year-old Joy Coleman had a close encounter with suspect Jason Dalton.
He wasn't shooting at first when we first saw him. He was just looking creepy at us.
I'm Jim Krasul in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Gary Pardo says he heard gunfire coming from the home of Jason Dalton earlier in the day Saturday.
I was sitting out there when shots were fired. I thought, well, maybe it was Jason because he had some burglaries in his garage here over the years.
Police say the 45-year-old Uber driver and former insurance adjuster had no criminal record.
A sworn deposition of Bill Cosby's wife, Camille, is taking place behind closed doors in Springfield, Massachusetts. So whatever she may say in a defamation suit filed by women who claim Cosby drugged and attacked them is a secret. Lawyers for the women can't ask about conversations the Cosbys may have had, but CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman tells us they can raise other questions.
Did she ever see pills? Did she ever see checks that might have been payoffs to keep people quiet? What might she have heard from anyone other than her husband.
The Centers for Disease Control says people exposed to certain kinds of laminate flooring sold by lumber liquidators are 3 times more likely than previously estimated to get cancer. The flooring had high levels of formaldehyde. Lumber Liquidators' stock is down more than 20% on the news. Tomorrow is Republican Caucus Day in Nevada, and most of the candidates are making a big last push for votes. CBS News correspondent Steve Futterman.
4 of the 5 remaining presidential candidates will be here in Nevada today: Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and Ben Carson. The only candidate avoiding Nevada is John Kasich. He is in Virginia, which is one of next week's key Super Tuesday primary states.
CBS's Nancy Cordes tells us this Saturday's Democratic primary in South Carolina is almost an afterthought for likely winner Hillary Clinton.
South Carolina looks good for her, but the candidates aren't just worried about South Carolina because they've got 12 contests coming up just 4 days after the South Carolina primary.
Clinton's expected to visit a number of states this week. Bernie Sanders will be in Massachusetts today and Virginia tomorrow. The nation's on-again, off-again love affair with the automobile was on again last year. The Federal Highway Administration says Americans logged a record 3,148 billion miles in 2015. A University of Southern California study concluded that women, minorities, and LBGTs are almost invisible in films and TV shows. Matthew Bellany is with The Hollywood Reporter.
This particular study, while interesting, is not new. I mean, everyone knows the numbers are not good.
In early trading, the Dow Industrials are up 214 points. This is CBS News.
The 2016 Grammy nominees album. Get your copy now. Music's biggest night delivers music's biggest hits, featuring 21 songs, including all the Record of the Year nominees: Uptown Funk, Blank Space, Can't Feel My Face, Thinking Out Loud, and Really Love.
And the Grammy goes to?
A portion of the proceeds benefits Music Cares and the Grammy Foundation, 2 organizations that help sustain music and its makers. The 2016 Grammy nominees album. For more information, go to Grammy.com.
I'm Rocky Moselle with StarRegistry.com. Since we were children, we've been told to reach for the stars. It was great advice. Now it's a great gift. Name a star after someone. For $54 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit StarRegistry.com, we will name a star after someone very special to you and send an incredible personalized gift. The new star name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Call the Star Registry, 800-282-3333 or visit StarRegistry.com for the hottest gift.
If it wasn't the man in the moon, then who did make the strange sound the astronauts heard?
Is it possible that Apollo astronauts heard aliens while circling the moon in May 1969? Newly released mission audio shows that they did hear something on the dark side of the moon.
You hear that whistling sound?
Astronaut Gene Cernan.
Sounds like, outer space-time music.
That recording is from Apollo 10's cockpit voice recorder. The tapes are part of a Science Channel series called NASA's Unexplained Files. Gene Cernan later walked on the moon, but we don't know if he heard anything strange while doing it. Peter King, CBS News.
Famed British aviator Eric Winkle Brown has died at the ripe old age of 97. Brown holds the record for flying the most different kinds of aircraft, 487, and was the first person to land a jet on an aircraft carrier, a feat he repeated a record 2,400 times. Frank Centofanti, CBS News.
Loan is a 30-year fixed rate loan.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect a cloudy, misty, and foggy start to your Monday. After a little break in the rain, more showers will push in from the south and west later today and tonight. Overnight lows near 50. For Tuesday, becoming breezy with more rain and thunder showers marching in late Tuesday night through much of Wednesday. The Fresh All New Wine Conference is coming to Abba's House March 6th through the 10th. Pastor Ron Phillips welcomes Perry Stone, Tommy Bates, Randy Caldwell, and others for this week of encouragement and renewal. More at FONW.com. And I'm Source 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
The This is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving us a couple of minutes of your time. We are at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, the station that suggests that if you love your neighbor, you will buy local. We are prejudiced, very prejudiced people here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Hot News Talk Radio. We are local talk, and my name is David Tulis. We think that near is better than far, that small is better than big, and simple than complex. Already, those 3 points put us dead set against Republicans and Democrats. And in the footnotes where the fleas fight with scimitar and javelin, we have the claim that personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. We have I'm posting this morning at EastRidgeNewsOnline.com my essay thrown together hastily in the past couple of days about the problem of dyslexia, and inspired by the very courageous movement of Tennessee's Governor Bill Haslam to respond to the crisis in dyslexia, to respond to the so-called crisis in the government sector of functional illiteracy. And my argument is that he is not stepping outside the current paradigm, which holds that dyslexia is a biological problem. That is the presupposition of the state, and that is the presupposition of many people who are concerned about this problem, who are acting in concert against it, who are fighting it, if you will, who are at war with dyslexia, and who are seeking the help of the state. In particular, in a bill that's before the General Assembly, to have screening of students in terms of the dyslexia problem. And I have on the phone with me one of the founders of a group called Decoding Dyslexia in Tennessee. She is a Knoxville mom of 2 children. She works in the nonprofit audio books sector. She's married to a math teacher. And Julia Johnson has a son named David, a 4th grader, and has dyslexia. Julia, tell us how it is you found that David is a dyslexic person. How did you come to that understanding?
Yeah, well, as far as David himself, we always knew he was smart. From the time he was just 3 years old, he knew every type of dinosaur, every type of, venomous, non-venomous creature out there. He's obsessed with, nature, basically. So we just knew he was going to be smart. So when we started with preschool with him, and he was not picking up on the letters of the alphabet, we knew there was a problem. However, the preschool's only suggestion to do for him was to hold him back a year, even though obviously he knew all of his science and his math and everything else. It was literally the letters of the alphabet that was giving him, the fits and the trouble. So we went on through school, and he continued to struggle. They kept telling me, his teachers would tell me that he would catch up, and it was all children learn to read at different times, and he would eventually catch up. Well, by 2nd grade, he was still having extreme issues. He was basically illiterate in 2nd grade, and we were doing all we knew to do. I was reading to him. That's what everything says: read to your child, and they'll learn to read. So anyway, a homeschool mother, actually, she's my good friend. Her name's Allison, and I was speaking with her. Her child has autism, so she's kind of in the special needs field a little bit. And she said, have you ever looked into dyslexia? And I said, no. I said, he doesn't write things backwards. That's what I thought. I said, he doesn't write things backwards. And she said, you really need to look into it. And she gave me very explicit directions of how to have him tested and evaluated. He immediately qualified, and that has just started this whole journey. It has really opened our world.
Now, what is the focus of Decoding Dyslexia in Tennessee? It's a nonprofit organization run by volunteers. And
nonprofit. Yeah, we're not nonprofit. We are actually grassroots.
Okay, grassroots, not incorporated.
Nope. Yeah, we're unincorporated. Okay. Yeah, we call ourselves a movement and not an organization.
Okay.
And what we are is we're moms, basically. There are some dads in the group, but we're mostly moms. And we are moms of children who struggle to read. And these include public school, private school, homeschool. We have a lot of homeschool parents in the group. But we're children who struggle to read, and we want to raise an awareness because we see out there other children who are struggling, and their parents don't know why, and their parents don't have the answers. And it's just so sad to see kids who cannot read when there are answers out there, and there are ways that you can help these kids. So that's really our purpose.
Explain how dyslexia comes about, Julia Johnson.
Yeah,
how does it happen?
It is Yale University actually has done a lot of research into this. Also, Boston University has done a lot of research into this. But some of it is fairly new research. And what they're doing now, there was this whole debate about whether dyslexia is genetic, biological, or if it's from not being taught appropriately. And so what they've done is these researchers is they've had students and adults read passages. And as they read, they scan their brains in fMRI brain scans. And they found that people with dyslexia use the right hemisphere of their brain when they're reading, and people without dyslexia use the left hemisphere. And they've actually found that your right side is much less efficient. So people with dyslexia, it is biologically based. However, they also found that if you start teaching these children with a phonemic awareness, explicit, multisensory, structured approach, which we do have a lot of programs out there like that, that it will actually fire up those brain neurons, and it will get them to start using that left hemisphere more. Dyslexia never goes away. It's always going to be a little bit slower and a little bit more labored type of reading. You know, it's going to be a person they may not necessarily love to read when they're grown up. They may not, read just absorb books all the time. But you can change those brain structures with a multisensory phonics-based approach. And whole language just will not do that. If you do whole language, they're just not going to learn to read.
Well, my listeners,
I think you know a little bit of those. Yeah.
Julia Johnson of Knoxville, my listeners, you're throwing my listeners just a little bit. Explain what whole word means, and explain, I guess, in contrast, what phonics-based, and then you add also the phrase multisensory approach phonics. What does that mean? How are these two remedies contrast?
Whole language came about several years ago, and it is basically, from my understanding of whole language, and I'm just a parent, I'm just kind of run up on these different things, but from my understanding of what whole language is, I guess researchers, I don't know who came up with it. Someone came up with this idea that if children could recognize words by sight, common words that they normally read, that they'll pick up reading and learn how to read just from looking at the words. That at least is my understanding of it. That maybe works for maybe 20% of kids. I mean, some kids that are just natural readers will pick up on it that way, but most kids need to be taught the sounds of words, like C says k or s, and A says ah, and T says t, to be able to put that together to spell cat. Most kids need to be taught the sounds in the words and how you blend them together, just like we used to with, see, spot, run, those old-timey ways that they used to teach reading. And so that is your phonics base. Now, you can go a little step further for your dyslexic child, and they actually have extreme trouble with knowing that C says k. And so what we do for them, what science has proven works for them, is if you can have them draw it in the air or write it in, shaving cream, some way that they're feeling it in a multisensory way. They see it, they touch it, they feel it, they say it out loud, they hear it. You need all those senses going at once. And if you can get all that going at once, it fires those neurons in their brain that actually gets that left hemisphere working a little bit more. And they've shown this on fMRI brain scans, which is fascinating if you start digging into the science to see how this works. So that's kind of your three differences, and I hope that made sense. Well,
as I understand from what you said, Julia Johnson, that the whole word makes the word a picture. Is that fair to say, that you look at the word not from sounds, but as an image? Right.
Yeah, that's my understanding of whole language and whole words.
Well, let me ask you about, just on that one proposed remedy. What if you have a word like constitution or anticipation? How does a whole word reader deal with a longer term like that's legal or medical or philosophical?
Exactly.
How can that system work?
From my perspective, a dyslexic reader cannot. I mean, they just cannot. They will shut down on a word like that. As a matter of fact, if they see a word like constitution and they have been taught in a whole word way, a lot of times they'll guess, and they may guess something completely wrong. Like they may guess construction. And then that completely throws off the meaning of the passage they're trying to read.
Well, now, you mentioned
whole language and decoding dyslexia.
All right. Now, you mentioned, though, Julia Johnson, the alternative to the look-say method. The look-say, my understanding is that dyslexia and that our functional illiteracy crisis comes from the use of the look-say method from the times of the 1930s. Now, the alternative is the phonics-based system. How does phonics work in a nutshell, Julia?
Yeah, sure. Phonics is definitely an alternative. Phonics, I personally like a lot. Phonics would teach you the sounds in the words and how they blend together. Like when you say constitution, you're actually going to break up the sounds. So you would look at the phoneme and the graphemes, which I know are different, things, they're kind of in our world, but take it apart by the syllables, and you could say cons. So the child would know that C at the beginning of the word says k, unless it's followed by E, I, or Y. They learn these kind of phonics rules, which a lot of us didn't learn growing up. I mean, I grew up in school in the 80s and 90s, and I think we were taught whole language. I didn't learn all this. So now that I'm trying to help my own son, I'm learning all this, and it's all making a lot more sense. But we break it up for them. So he would learn that C says k, O says ah, and then he would put it all together, cons, and then he would do substitution. So we would break up the word like that instead of learning it by shape.
So in the
but for a
phonics,
dyslexic child, it is a little bit more than just the fact that they've been taught wrong. The fact that they are taught the whole language is a problem, but dyslexia itself even needs that multisensory component to make those neurons fire.
So
so it's just a little bit more in depth, and that's why it's classified as a learning disability.
So your suggestion then, Julie Johnson of Knoxville, you are one of the founders of the Decoding Dyslexia in TN group. It's a volunteer group. Your understanding is that phonics is helpful because if you're taught to read by phonics, you can eventually absorb very long words, very complicated words, because you hear them, right? You're always hearing the words as you read. The word constitution, you hear your eye as it crosses the letters makes the word in your mind's ear. You hear that word, and as your eye flies over it, you hear the whole thing in a gulp, and you can read it and understand it and move on to the next word. And so reading is an extension of hearing effectively, right?
Exactly. That is exactly right. We call that phonological awareness. And a lot of that has to do with the auditory processing. And, people always thought in the past, a lot of times people thought dyslexia was visual. They thought that the kids were seeing things backwards, but they actually found out that they're struggling to process the sounds. So it has a lot more to do with hearing. Sometimes they will reverse, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that they also struggle with left and right. And so when they're struggling with left and right, obviously a B or a D could go either way. So that's why you're seeing that. But it's really much more to do with the sound and the hearing of those sounds than it is to do with the visual processing.
Well, Julie Johnson, tell my listener about the bill that's before the House and the Senate. I think it's the same bill before each body. What is it proposed to do? And you mentioned a moment ago that it touches on screening. What will the screening do, and what benefit will it bring to the parents who use the public school?
Yeah, definitely. We'll touch on that. It actually is not adding an additional test. I know some parents are really anti-test, and I am too. I don't love the test. It's not adding an additional one. Our children are already screened in kindergarten through second grade for reading and math to see if they're struggling in them. And so what we are proposing is just on that same screening to have a test that does specifically identify the kids who are struggling with the sounds and the words. And of course, those are the kids that are at risk for dyslexia. They may not necessarily have it, but they're at risk. And so we want the parents to be notified, because a lot of my issue with my son and why he got so far behind is that I had no idea that this could be more than just a developmental delay. I kept being told that he'll catch up and that all kids learn at different times. Well, it turns out that's not necessarily true. You really need to catch them in kindergarten or second grade, or else they're going to be 2 years behind and just really treading water trying to catch up. So we want these kids to be identified early, kindergarten, second grade, and then we would like the parents to be notified. That is in the bill. Parents should be notified because we feel like parents are the key to everything, and parents should know everything going on in their child's education. And then we also want our kids to be placed into a proper reading program, not a whole language program, but an explicit phonemic awareness program that will address these issues of struggling to hear the sounds and words. So that's really the heart of the bill. It also does ask for an advisory council. And part of that is that we're trying to work with Governor Haslam to see if he will fund this. We hope that he will. We weren't involved with his reading initiative, but we do hope that he will specifically address that, these are the issues that are going on. And this does have a lot to do with our literacy issues in some of our schools.
You're confident, Julia Johnson, that public schools in Tennessee really do want children to learn how to read, that they are not somehow involved in a conspiracy to make them functionally literate so that they will be dependent or pliable, leadable, civic-minded people. That's not your view at all, that genuinely you believe schools want children to be able to read.
Yeah, I really don't have it. I've never actually thought about anything like that. my husband is a teacher. He's a high school teacher. And I know he doesn't have any kind of, kind of motivation like that. He just wants to help kids learn math. So I don't really have any thoughts on that specifically. My whole goal is just to get more kids reading, and to make sure parents know if there's an issue that it's not necessarily going to always fix itself by just waiting, because that's what I was always told. It was kindergarten. I mean, I knew something was on the pre-K through second grade, and all that we're told is wait and see. They'll catch up. Just wait. It'll click overnight. You'll be shocked. And I just want parents to know that is not always the case, and that there are things that they can do now that will help their child.
Julia, how can my listener find out more about your group's efforts, particularly as they might be in effect here in the Chattanooga area?
Yeah, that would be fabulous. We do have a website, and it is a WordPress website. So it is Decoding Dyslexia. The reason why we say decoding is exactly what you were talking about earlier, David, when you were talking about the Constitution and how you break it apart like that. That is decoding. That is what it's called. So we call it Decoding Dyslexia because that's what we're wanting our kids to learn, is how to decode words. So it's Decoding Dyslexia TN, and then it's .wordpress.com. You can find us there. We're also on Facebook, and we're very active on Facebook.
All right, again,
so
the
if you would like
address.
to find us on Facebook, just search Facebook for Decoding Dyslexia TN, and we will come up. And like we said, we're not just public school. We have a ton of homeschool parents and resources, and we would just love to have anyone interested in the cause to come join us.
Okay, that website again is decodingdyslexiatn.wordpress.com. Is that right?
Right, and the reason it's .wordpress is because we are grassroots. We have no money, so that's a free site. But yeah, that's where we are.
Well, this is David Tulis, and we're talking with a mom out of Knoxville who is part of the Decoding Dyslexia in TN, a group concerned about the phenomenon of functional illiteracy, and specifically its roots in dyslexia, which these moms and some of the dads involved believe is a biological origin. My own argument today at EastRidgeNewsOnline.com. You'll have to read it to see. It's at EastRidgeNewsOnline.com, and the headline, let me just tease you, is "Dyslexia Remains Public Policy in Read to Be Ready Program." And I'm suggesting that the policy of our state is not literacy, but functional illiteracy. It's kind of a scary suggestion, but I make it based on the history of the reading problem and the solution to the reading problem that was founded in the 1830s by a man named Gallaudet, who ran the School for the Deaf and Dumb. And his solution for teaching reading to those who couldn't hear was the look-say method. And that is the method that is used and has been used in public education for the past 70 years or so, and which has brought about a crisis. So there is a difference here. My guest says that dyslexia is based in biology, and that's shown by brain scans of dyslexic people compared to those brain scans of those who are not dyslexic. And there is a difference there. But my own analysis, as far as I can take it, is that it is a policy. It is a policy change, a policy decision, and it goes back to the behaviorist school of science back in the 1920s and 30s that had a very low view of the individual. They were collectivists and behaviorists. They viewed man as a collective animal and an animal, and so their tendency in the control mechanisms that they were creating was to have a pliable people, with illiteracy being a danger. If you have too many literate people, you have a danger to the system, the industrial commercial system that they run, their state-oriented progressive system as well. And so it's important that people not be too independent, not be too literate. Julia, thanks so much for joining me here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to come on, and listeners, check us out. Thank you.
Great. We are at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and we believe in local economy and the free market. We believe in local solutions. The reading solution is not the school, okay? The reading problem is in the school, especially if that school is run by the state, and especially if the cartel of educrats run things with their handles in the back and their tax dole, making it all work for you. I'm a skeptic. I am a skeptic, and my wife and I we taught 4 children to read from a simple reader, a $20 reader. You can find out which reader that is if you go to Nooganomics.com. A little bit later this morning, I'll be posting my version of that story. That's Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. What is the key to teaching reading? What is the key? It's a book, and the cover is red. Red. And I am glad that you're giving me a couple of minutes of your time. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot News Talk Radio right here. Local economy and the free markets. My name is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. Check out my bow tie on YouTube at the Hot News Talk Radio channel. We are live on YouTube every weekday from 9 to 11. I've got some things I want you to hear. Hang on.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect a cloudy, misty, and foggy start to your Monday. After a little break in the rain, more showers will push in from the south and west later today and tonight. Overnight lows near 50 for Tuesday, becoming breezy with more rain and thunder showers marching in late Tuesday night through much of Wednesday. The Fresh All New Wine Conference is coming to Abba's House March 6th through the 10th. Pastor Ron Phillips welcomes Perry Stone, Tommy Bates, Randy Caldwell, and others for this week of encouragement and renewal. More at FONW.com. And I'm Soarzine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Are you prepared? Do you have an emergency plan? Do you have the skills and mindset to survive a disaster? Now is the time to come to P5 Preparedness. We offer preparedness classes, supplies, and over 30 years of combined knowledge. P5 Preparedness, located on East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel. Look for the big Army truck. Call us at 423-602-2175. Do not wait. You need to get prepared today. Nobody knows what tomorrow holds. Get the skills and supplies you need or die waiting for help. P5 Preparedness.
Hello, I'm Mike Little, candidate for criminal court judge with 25 years of criminal court experience, which makes me the most qualified candidate. The experience I have gained from handling over 4,000 cases in state and federal court has equipped me with the ability to be fair, impartial, and independent. As your next criminal court judge, I will focus on keeping Hamilton County safe. I view this position as a public service and will strive to improve the daily operation of the court. I humbly ask for your trust and vote in the March 1st Republican primary.
Paid for by the committee to elect Mike Little. Barry Abbott, Treasurer.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business? Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock. Call me now, 875-5621.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Hear it live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. Apple wants the government to drop its demand to help the FBI hack an iPhone used by a shooter in the San Bernardino attack. CEO Tim Cook posting the message.
Cook dismissed the government's claim that Apple is acting out of business interest. FBI Director James Comey says this is about victims and justice.
It's not about us trying to get a backdoor.
Comey says Apple owes it to the victims of the shootings to cooperate.
Fox Radio's Rachel Sutherland. The Supreme Court back in session, its first since the death of Justice Antonin Scalia.
The court's 8 justices will hear the arguments, and no telling how many more, since key Senate leaders vow to hold over any nominee until a new president is in office.
Fox Radio's Jared Alpern. Jury selection starts today in a Nashville case involving sportscaster and TV host Erin Andrews. She's filed a $75 million lawsuit against a luxury hotel and a man who admitted making secret nude recordings of her in 2008. Fox News. We report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. 40 vehicles damaged and $250,000 worth of damage done at East Tennessee Auto in McMinn County. Detective Blake Witt coordinated an investigation and arrested 2 juvenile suspects. The juveniles will be charged with vandalizing an Etowah Utilities tractor as well that was located nearby. They are likely to be held at the Bradley County Juvenile Detention Facility overnight until their appearance in McMinn County Juvenile Court. And a 14-year-old boy was shot in the leg on Ocoee Street, according to the police. The police arrived on scene within minutes of getting a call, and they found the teen with a non-life-threatening gunshot wound to the leg. They confirmed the juvenile had been shot on the 2000 block of Ocoee Street. Violent crimes investigators have located 2 possible suspects. They've been detained for questioning. The Chattanooga police is asking anyone with any information to call 423-698-2525 if you have any information. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
We get Imprimis at my house every month, 3 million readers monthly from Hillsdale College. There's a great little piece I'm looking forward to reading about philanthropy. The nonprofit sector is 11% of the U.S. workforce. It contributes about 6% of the gross domestic product this year. And according to Carl Zinmeister from the Philanthropy Roundtable, to put this in perspective, the charitable sector passed the national defense sector in size in 1993, and it continues to grow. And these numbers don't take volunteering into account. And that's because volunteering is a service of time and labor that's not given a dollar figure. Charitable volunteers make up the equivalent, depending on how you count, of between 4 and 10 million full-time employees. So philanthropy is clearly a huge force in society. That's in the Imprimis, the latest one that came a couple days ago in the mail. You can get it for free. Just Google Imprimis, IMPRIMIS. It's had some tremendous essays every month. It's a free newsletter that comes. Of course, there's a proposal that you send your son or daughter to Hillsdale, the free market university, and I have no doubt that doing so would be a great blessing to that young person if funds were available. Of course, that's the problem. Funds are not available as we head into the crisis, and more and more people are thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to retire on? And so on. I don't believe in retirement. I simply don't. If for some reason I can't, in my dotage, run my show here, well, guess what? I'll hand it over to Russell, our news director, who is a very local economy kind of guy, and who has a quirky revisionist interest in certain historical topics, the same that I do, oddly enough. And he may well stand for me. But I don't plan at age 65 to say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to kick back, receive my Social Security check, and just watch television. That's not going to happen for me. I'm going to keep working as long as I can. And the reason is at 65, I'll be more valuable than I am now. I'm a dozen years less than that or so. And there's no point in suddenly stopping when you are the most valuable, have the most connections, are the wisest in your field. If you are not beset with a neurological disorder that prevents you from remembering your wife's name, then you need to keep plodding on and keep expanding the great service that you, my listener, do to your family, your extended family, your neighbors, and really, most importantly, I'd say your customers, the people who rely on you for the services you now provide. And that may be an employer, your customer. It may be people in the free market who come to you, come to your shop, come to your website, your business, because you have a reputation for honor and integrity. You make it right if there's a problem. You fix things, right? You cut costs for that customer. You give him the ease of service, the ease of use that he expects from his equipment. You keep him going, and you're always ready to serve him. Why? Because you're thinking about him. You're thinking about him every day. Bill Clinton would tell his viewers on television he's thinking about them right then in that lecture hall. He was thinking about the viewer of that election pitch at that very moment. And he had a way of hypnotically connecting with people. You don't have the power of hypnosis that Bill did, but you, my listener, have a marketplace power. And my goal is to help encourage you to think more in terms of the man you are serving. I was trying to serve my son yesterday. I have 4 children and 1 boy at home, to serve him with the birds and bees lecture. And I want to tell you a little bit about it, because the birds and the bees connect with local economy and the free market. And I don't think I actually told him that they did, or that it did, but I can tell you that there's a connection between the birds and the bees and local economy, the free market. And it's in this direction. And it comes, the reason it's a free market issue and a capitalist issue is because without character, there cannot be capital. And without honor and integrity in relations between the sexes, there cannot be family, there cannot be the bosom of children, the bosom to which children, in which they are nurtured. Of course, the children attach themselves to their mother's bosoms, hopefully, and avoid Similac and such things as that, the manufactured milk, and get the best stuff on earth, which is mother's milk. But the bosom of the family that I'm referring to are not the breasts of the mom, but the home where the dad and the mom provide that locus, that place where children learn to love God, learn to think about others, learn to obey, right? Learn authority, learn how to submit to lawful authority, and to speak respectfully, to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, or yes, mom, or yes, dad at home, and to control themselves, to govern themselves, so that when they leave home, as they certainly will, they will be self-governing, prosperous men and women in their respective fields. Now, what the birds and the bees lecture, of course, comes when the young man is starting to churn a little bit, right? He's 13 or so, 12, 13, 14, and he's already turning physiologically into a man, right? And I pointed out to my son that in old Israel, you could marry at 14, right? Because at 14, you were able of impregnating a woman and siring a child, a son or daughter, with that woman. And so there has to be character and strength commensurate with the physical ability to reproduce, right? And so I wanted him to, by that comment, to show him that I esteem him as a man, young man, and that the old Israelites in the Hebrew Republic, they were esteemed of God in their culture. They're nomadic, very word-oriented, God-oriented culture. Also esteemed young men as capable of having children. And so what about this desire? What about desires for girls? What about looking at girls? What about conversations with boys about girls, right? What about the internet, where there is the ever waiting screen of people having sexual intercourse, or women in bikinis, right? Women sitting around with their legs spread, that sort of thing. Women with their busts bursting from little cloth triangles. What about scenes like that, which are inevitably going to come his way? Can he govern his thoughts? Can he desire the right thing and not desire that which he looks upon, right? That upon which his gaze falls, as the beauties in the bikinis, the Brazilian beauties and the pinups are parading in front of him online, or on someone else's computer, or someone's smartphone, right? Some boy with a smartphone watches pornography online, and my son is there going to watch too. Is he going to be absorbed by what he sees, or is he going to flee sin and temptation? As a Christian, that is, of course, how I view that. And so, in our conversation, the birds and bees conversation with my son, I wanted to esteem him, and I wanted to encourage him to understand how he was changing as a person in his body, and to suggest that sexuality, that sex is a great blessing. First of all, my discourse with him, my conversation with him, was to magnify sex, right? You magnify sex as a great blessing. A blessing, it is God's greatest gift to man, you could say. and of course every one of whom thinks that he is God's greatest gift to the woman of his life, and so God is laughing at us, of course, as C.S. Lewis said. He laughs at us when we make love to our mates, to our wives. He laughs at us. We are ridiculous. We are laughably ridiculous. The man passionately pursuing his beloved, right? And he's humiliated by his desires. He loves her. He loves the intimacy with his wife. It is man's greatest gift, and that is why so many. Christianity would say so many sins come from coveting in flesh, coveting desire, coveting with one's eyes and with one's body, that member of the opposite sex. And God's law, Christianity comes in with God's law, specifically on the seventh commandment, right? The commandment that forbids adultery and all uncleanness, right? It forbids fornication, it forbids sodomy, buggery, looking at dirty pictures, vile and licentious conversations. These are all forbidden in the commandment. The law of God protects sex. It's there to protect sex, just as the Tennessee Constitution is there to protect your property right in travel, let's say, or your property right in your business, or even in your wife, right? You, my listener, have a property right in all kinds of property rights that exist protected by law. God's law protects marriage as his property. It's his property, and he doles it out. He doles out sex according to standard biblical teaching to a select group, right? Not everybody can have sex in Christianity. Only people who are married, who are lawfully wed, may enjoy the delightful anarchy, if you will, the delightful pleasures of the bed, the marriage bed. And trespassers keep out. That's essentially the argument in Christianity. I told my son that you cannot trespass on this delightful thing which you, the young men, are already interested in, admit it or not. Well, you're asking, what was your son's reactions to all this conversation, David? What did he say? Did he have a lot of words in this conversation? Well, what do you think? No, you're right. He didn't have a lot of conversation. He was rather sheepish, let's say. As I remember, I was sheepish when my dad had one of his birds and bees talks with me as a young boy. He answered very carefully. He would say yes or no. Like he would answer my questions very monosyllabically, wondering when he got to the end of the word if somehow there was going to be a trap that sprung on him. I didn't spring any traps on my son, but he did answer very carefully, not sure where I was going with this. But I think he already knew where Dad was going, because he said, "Well, Dad, we've already had this talk," and I vaguely remember bringing it up. But I like to think that I often bring up the sex question in my house because it is something that is not a secret, right? It's not a dirty thing. Sex is a delightful thing that God protects, and so what do we have? How is my son supposed to deal with his desires, right? His pending desires for intimacy with a teenage girl he meets, maybe a girl at church. Okay, this is David Tulis, caller. You're live on the air. Do you have something to add?
David, I mean, your son. I mean, you need to be talking to 85-year-olds too. 3/4 of them said they've had intimacy at least once every 6 months, and they're 85. But I love this subject. I mean, my dad, like you, gave me some great advice as he sat down to talk about the birds and the bees. He said, "Boy, keep your pecker in your pants and you stay out of trouble." And that was it.
Well, that's a bit of earthy advice, and that I'd say that's true. There's more than just a practical reason, though. It's not you follow the advice of that caller not just because it's pragmatic or reasonable, okay? But I'd say that there's a higher reason for it, and that's the preservation of intimacy with your wife. And your most wondrous experience as a man, maybe even your most wondrous experience as a woman, you preserve, you give that away to the one you intend to live with with your whole life. That would be your wife or your husband. The woman who gives herself away at the first handsome beau who persuades her of his great desire, his great need, and his great fidelity to her, is the scriptures say, sinning against herself. She's giving something away that she can't give away to anyone else. and she is in having an intimacy without the promise, right? You have the sex in these relationships that the scriptures call fornication. You have these intimacies, but not the promise, whether it's cohabitation or just a periodic sexual adventure or misadventure with a member of the opposite sex. And there is no promise, which means that there can't be anything culturally built upon it. Not only is it sin according to the scripture, the Christian argument, the biblical argument, not only is it a sin against God, taking from God his prerogatives, but it in the end has a cumulative effect. If everybody in Chattanooga sleeps around, if everybody disregards marital vows, there cannot be a Chattanooga. Chattanooga and Hamilton County are built on the promises of sexual fidelity and of course, and of continuing sexual union, right? We have growth in Hamilton County and in places where you might be from, you, my listener, if you're from elsewhere. You have growth when you have children created. Children are created by this delightful act that boys wonder about, that boys in old days used to look at National Geographic to think about, to fantasize about. Now, though, of course, everything is online and there's much more access to this sort of emulation, should I say, stimulation, and maybe even information. I'm sure that the information is probably not sought by the young, and it's more of a fantastical stimulation or simulation that is in view. But marriage is a barrier to sin. St. Paul says that if you cannot restrain yourself, if you cannot govern yourself, control your desires, well, it's better to marry than to burn with desire. And that, of course, is what marriage does. Marriage feeds the natural desire that God implants in the breast of every man, and even every woman. I'd say probably men have more sexual desire than women do, but I haven't read deeply into that lately. Okay, so I'm just offering that as something in pencil. We can adjust it later. And so Christianity gives this desire to the son, right? In this birds and bees lecture, this birds and bees conversation. I tried to make it as much a conversation as I could with the young man, and to focus on certain topics that were coming into view as I prattled on. And he listened. So it was really less of a conversation and more of a kind of a digression, a kind of long series of digressions with the young man. But in the end, we want to have the writing of one man on the soul of one woman. And I say it that way because I'm remembering a novel, a Graham Greene novel some time back, and I don't remember which one, in which he tells of a whore who had the right. Her soul had scribblings on it from hundreds of men. She, of course, for her, sex was just a piece of merchandise that she forbore to pass on for payment. But her soul was scribbled on, like a wall scribbled on by hundreds of people. And in the end, there's no coherence in the message. There's no message. There's no distinct identity of the writings on the wall. And so the idea of one man and one woman is truly remarkable, and it comes out of the Christian argument. It comes out of the biblical, the biblical theme of Christ and the church. Right? Christ has a bride, and he is the groom. Many parables make this point, and he marries the bride despite her sins, despite her faults. And he expects her to hold just to him, to hold just to her union with him and to no other, right? So when the church strays, it is into idolatry. It is into error, the worshiping of false gods. But the church is supposed to hold to him who is faithful to her and her people. And he has chosen her. She has not chosen him. She simply responds to the groom. The church responds to the groom and is responsive. So in other words, the church is not initiatory of sex, but you could say responsive to her lover, the Lord Jesus. That is the biblical Song of Solomonic way of looking at it, perhaps. But the example is clear, though. But there's fidelity in that relationship. The eyes of the church do not wander. And of course, the groom's eyes in that perfect example of marriage, the groom's eyes don't wander either. They're always upon his bride, his beloved. And that, of course, in Christian theology, that is constituted by God's people. So here's the young man who has this dad who's a believer in God, who wants him to be holy, who wants him to be pure, who wants there to be not just the form, but the substance. And last night it was appropriate to read. We were reading Luther last night, and in J.H. Male d'Aubigné, and this idea of God giving the substance, not just the form, is part of the Reformation. We don't have a Reformation going on in Chattanooga just now. There is a digital economy Reformation that's more technological, that is going to overturn economic systems. But the soul of Europe was changed by the Reformation. D'Aubigné, in his great history of the Reformation, says this. He says, "The word of God, which Luther wielded with so much power, pierced their minds like a sharp two-edged sword, and their hearts were inflamed with an ardent desire to obtain the assurance of pardon and eternal life. Since primitive times, the church had not known such hungering and thirsting after righteousness." You see how my talk about the birds and the bees fitted in with the history reading yesterday night. If the preaching of Peter the Hermit and Bernard so aroused the population of the Middle Ages as to make them take up a perishable cross, the preaching of Luther disposed those of his time to embrace the true cross, the truth which saves, D'Aubigné says. The framework, which then lay with all its weight on the church, had smothered everything. The form had destroyed the life. But the powerful word given to Luther caused a quickening breath to circulate over the soil of Christendom. At the first glance, the writings of Luther were equally captivating to believers and unbelievers. To unbelievers, because the positive doctrines afterwards to be established were not yet fully developed in them. And to believers, because they contained the germ of that living faith which they so powerfully express. Hence, the influence of these writings was immense. We're talking about the 95 Theses on the door of the Wittenberg Church and other texts. They spread almost instantaneously, right? This is in the 1500s, no internet, instantaneously over Germany and the world. The prevailing impression of men everywhere was that they were assisting not in the establishment of a sect, but at a new birth of the church and of society. Those who were born of the Spirit of God ranged themselves around him who was its organ. Christendom was divided into two camps. The one leagued with the Spirit against the form, and the other with the form against the Spirit. Okay, that the latter is the church of that day. The former is the Reformation, the rise of Protestantism. It is true that on the side of the form were all the appearances of strength and grandeur, and on the side of the Spirit, those of feebleness and insignificance. But the form, devoid of the Spirit, is a lifeless body, which the first breath may upset. Its appearance of power only provokes hostility and accelerates its downfall. In this way, last sentence, in this way, the simple truth had placed Luther at the head of a mighty army. And that was the Reformation of which you, my listener, and I are heirs. We are heirs of the Reformation, in which the Spirit revives over the form. The form in those days had consumed all, had deadened everything. There was no spiritual life in Christendom, hardly at all, except with a few pockets. In monkeries, there was, but on the whole, it had gone entirely out of Europe. And Luther, thanks to his discovery of the doctrines of grace, discovered and revealed a great thing for humankind. So the argument that I made to my son about the birds and the bees was: govern yourself, love God, fear temptation, because all the things that you can see on the internet, the naked girls, the frolicking lasses, the enticements for pleasure are many, and yet you have to guard yourself. You have to wait for the one to whom God will bring you, and to you she will be given, right, in God's providence and in God's time. And so this was the conversation I had with my son. And is it touching on local economy and the free markets? Well, yes, because if he obeys these advices from his father, if he obeys what he hears in the Christian church, he will be a profitable man. He will be a man, hopefully, with many children, a faithful wife. He will be faithful to her. He will be industrious, hardworking. He will fill our block in Saudi Daisy, right? Just as you, my listener, hopefully will fill your block in your neck of the woods here in Hamilton County.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the